Okay, welcome everybody to this video. I hope you're doing fine. As you can see, my beard is growing, and in the passing of weeks, hopefully you will see my beard grow more, and I'll be probably fatter and probably whiter because of this confinement. I don't know if whiter is a word, but well, you know what I mean. So let's go over this technology topic, this first part. These are the books that I have been reading in order to prepare this lesson. Well, as I always say, you don't really need to read them in order to pass this exam or these lessons. I mean, and moreover, but at some point of your life, it would be interesting for you, I guess, to read them, and especially if you are interested in what the lesson says, and you want to go deeper in some of the matters, you could perfectly read them. Just bear in mind that, for example, this book here, David Graeber, Bullshit Jobs, is something that we are not going to discuss today. Or keep in mind also that Marcuse's The One-Dimensional Man, it's quite a difficult, philosophically speaking, quite a difficult book. Look, Jacques Ellul, this first and the second one, and Herbert Marcuse books are actually quite old, but this is one of the reasons why I chose them, because they are like the basis of the criticism of technology that I am doing in this lesson, and the basis of this criticism done by anyone else after them. Byung-Chul Han is probably a better recommendation because he writes very short books and they are quite understandable. I mean, quite easy to understand for people who have not practiced a lot of philosophical reading. Then we have George Orwell, and I'm sorry to put my name here, but part of the things that I will explain can be found in this article I published some time ago. So that's that. Let's start the lesson. These are the basic questions. So this presentation will have three parts. What is technological society? What is that one-dimensional man? And how did Ellul describe this more or less same concept in his books? What is the one-dimensional man? That's the second part of the lesson. And the third, what are the main criticisms that technology has received in the past 100 years? These criticisms are, well, they are divided in two parts. We will see a few of them today, and in our next lesson, the second part of technology, we'll see the other criticisms. Okay, in order to explain what the technological society is, you probably would have to think of a technological organization or an organization that is technologically organized. And think, for example, of a modern hospital. Everything there is designed so that the running of the hospital is easy and effective. Everything is designed so that the patients can be cured in the lesser possible time. Everything is organized so that everything is effective and economical and well done. No? Even the building itself. So everything is designed according to the best way set of mind. When you have two proposals of how to do something, if you have the technological mind, you end up choosing the most effective one. No? And once you have decided that, people start thinking how to make it better. But make it better means always how to make it more effective and more economical. No? So if you have to organize a hospital, if in the technological set of mind, what you would do is to have people in the entrance asking the patients what to do with a standardized questionnaire. And then apply like an algorithm to these people so that they are sorted out and sent to the right part of the hospital or back home. So you have the procedure is the most important thing. The people who are like in charge of doing this job, don't need to do anything else than apply the procedure that you have designed. And then everything is set already for the people so that they just don't they only have to follow the procedure and everything goes well. And then when the patient is finally admitted to the hospital, what the doctor does is to talk to him and ask for his symptoms, but he doesn't really need wouldn't really need to look to visit the patient. He only needs the information. What he does with the information is to apply another algorithm, is to compare the information that he has received from the patient and from the patient history. So the patient can be lying about what he's doing or can forget things. No, if you have the history, you only have to compare the history with the general knowledge that we have of illnesses and other problems, and compare that history with this knowledge. You can know and what happens to what's wrong with the patient and then make a diagnosis. So actually, the doctor doesn't need to see the patient. He only needs the information, and what he does is to apply a certain algorithm, a certain standardized procedure. So the doctor actually doesn't need to act like a human being. He can act like a machine, basically. And then when he has made the diagnosis, then he has to apply only the correct algorithm to give the medication that the patient needs. And then the patient probably is going to be cured if the diagnosis is right. The whole procedure is done like if the people involved were actually not people but robots, or not people but data. The only thing that is relevant in a hospital is the real relevant thing is the information circulating. So the whole process can be done very quickly, and since it is standardized, it can be done simultaneously to a lot of people. So it's technological society. When one organization is organized technologically, it can go very fast actually. So it produces acceleration. Well, this is only one example, the example of a hospital, but there would be a lot of them. So of these same traits of the technological society apply to other organizations or are applied to our present lives. So please make sure that you read the notes. So the technological society is led by technology. Technology is what really produces changes in our society. Now think of the new technologies that are introduced and how they have changed our lives. Now think of what we are doing here. We're making a lesson without none of us being there actually. So as I was saying before, people have to. The technology is like autonomous. Every time that we create a new technology, people start thinking how to make it better, and to make it better, it always means to make it more effective. So sometimes it seems like technology goes by itself, following its own rules, because nobody wants to have a technology that is less effective than the previous one. So technology will always follow the law of being effective. That means that we have to adapt to technology instead of technology adapting to us, because technology only looks for effectiveness, and then we have to adapt to it. And for example, in the agriculture, there are very powerful tools like heavy machinery that can do the job of hundreds of people, but these machines are quite dangerous. And to make it safer would mean to make them less effective. So they're dangerous, and they will keep being dangerous. And also, they say that a lot of young people have short-sightedness because of the intensive use of cell phones. So if we made cell phones with bigger screens, then they wouldn't be useful. They wouldn't be effective. So it's better. It doesn't matter if we lose sight by using them, because we have to adapt to technology. And it seems somehow that sometimes that it's difficult to keep technology under control, because technology follows the rule of what is doable will be done eventually. This is why we say that it's difficult to keep technology under control. And finally, it seems to be autonomous, follow its own rules and so on. Now, what is the one-dimensional man? This is quite interesting, because sociologists consider that a culture, it's a phenomenon that has like 3 dimensions. The first one is what we do in order to have what we need to get from nature, what we need to be alive, our food, all the resources that we need. This is one of the aspects of a culture, how people survive. This dimension is technology, properly speaking. What inventions we do to make life easier for us. That's the first dimension, the technology. The second dimension is how we organize ourselves politically as a society, how we organize families, how we relate to one another, what hierarchies are there in our society, etc. That's the second dimension, the social dimension, the political and social dimension. And the third dimension is the dimension of meaning. What literature is there in a society? What religion is there? What do people think? What do people say to one another? What stories we tell each other so that our lives are meaningful and have value for ourselves. That's like culture, the culture of a culture, the culture inside one society. So these 3 dimensions, we have material needs, so we have technology, that would be the first dimension. We have social needs, so we have to organize ourselves to just to relate to one another peacefully, without conflict. This is the social dimension of our existence. And then we have cultural, meaning spiritual needs, which are in this third dimension of culture. Well, the discovery that Marcuse does here is that technology is perfect for the first dimension of our existence, because when we need to work to extract from nature what we need to survive, it's very suitable to apply a technological mind. We have to think of the best way to do it. Best way to do it meaning the most effective and the less painful way to do it. So technology and the technological mind should be always applied to the first dimension. But then, when you apply it to the other 2 dimensions, the social needs and the cultural needs, some strange things happen. If we had to organize our society in a technological and an effective way, probably we would choose to have dictatorships instead of democracies, because the dictatorship is always much more effective than a democracy, because the democracy is messy and there are a lot of conflicts and the decisions are taken very slowly and so. So instead of having a democracy, if we apply technological set of mind, we would use the dictatorship, because dictatorship allows us to make decisions quite quickly and quite effectively. But somehow people like to be free, and have their political opinions and being able to oppose to what the government says and so. So technological mind shouldn't be applied to social needs and social organizations. And technology doesn't tell us who we are. It's something that we have to decide beforehand before creating any technology. Otherwise, if we let technology decide for us who we are, our existence loses meaning. Or, this is much more important, we are reduced to subjects of productivity. If we apply the technological mind to societies and we expect technology to tell us who we are, then we are reduced to people who produce things for the others, and we lose sight of our spiritual meaning needs. We just become productive subjects. We become the one-dimensional man. Go to the class notes to find I think a perfect example with the example of the sperm donor. How a sperm donor is someone who is paid for being a father, but also for not being a father. No? He's reduced to one dimension of his abilities, which is the ability of having children. But then he's also so reduced to that he actually disappears as a father. This is a very good example of reducing someone to only his productive dimension. Well, in the class notes, you will find a text by Ellul describing this reduction of a person into his productive abilities, and which is like someone who is erased in a technological society and reduced only into his productive abilities. And let's go for the third part of this presentation. And the criticisms that have been done against technology are mainly this three. The first is that technology was supposed to make us freer, but then technology has allowed to control our lives perfectly in a very particular way. Because the surveillance is not done compulsory from outside, it's done by ourselves and willingly, because we have been seduced into sharing who we are, what we do, and what we produce to share that in the social networks. So in the end, it's very easy to control what everyone does. The other criticism is that the technology is addictive. I don't think you need long explanations to understand why it is possible to say that technology is addictive. And the final criticism is that it degrades the quality of our attention. Well, defactualization. Defactualization is the loss of solidity of the objects because of the use of technology. The most simple example, I guess, is the difference between a real book and an e-book. An e-book is something that really doesn't exist, whereas a book is something that is solid and has qualities like you can touch it and you can smell it and you can feel it, whereas you can do anything of that with an e-book. So technology has reproduced the process of defactualization with many other objects, not only books. For example, I am a defactualized teacher because you can see me and hear me, but actually I'm not there. I'm like not a real person. No? And well, you could multiply the examples of defactualization. There are a few bunch of them in the class notes. I decided to put this quotation here in German for our German friends. And in the class notes, you will not actually find the translation, but there's a good explanation of what defactualization is. Going back to the example of the sperm donor, someone who gives sperm to a sperm bank is actually the father of many people, but then he's defactualized. He, as a father, he doesn't exist, although he's the natural father. And the same happens with surrogate mothers. They are not real people. They're just a set of organs. They are not valued for who they are, but they are valued for the organs they have. They're like reduced into a machine. And actually, also the patients that go to a hospital, a modern hospital, they are not really real people. They are a set of data that has to be processed in order to cure them. There are lots of examples of defactualization, this loss of solidity, this loss of reality of the objects. And defactualization is also important because if we live surrounded by defactualized objects and defactualized realities, we become also defactualized. And it is not, so it's against our real needs of being rooted in the world to be surrounded by defactualized objects all the time. So let's just leave it here. It's like a summary of the real lesson that you will find in the class notes. So see you next week.